If you want to support the show, you can go to mwpnews.com/support, where you can pick up my latest book, Succession Planning, and all my other books that have previously been released on Kindle for only $2.99 each. Thank you. Good morning, and happy Monday. Welcome to the Backlog Files. I am Adam. I'm in an unenviable position this week because I like to record these in advance and have, and not be backlogged and have a nice little, room of padding so that way I can, that I'm not forgetting shit. And we have an episode every week. And what we have today is Pokemon Gold and Silver. Now, you're wondering why we're doing this on Monday instead of on Tuesday. That's because tomorrow is the Pokémon Presents, and it's Pokemon Day, which means they're going to be announcing all their new shit for the next year. Which means at the end of this episode, on top of talking about Pokemon Gold and Silver, which we're going to talk about today anyway, we're going to talk about what we think is going to happen in this presentation, and what cool things we think are going to come out of it. Then tomorrow, on the day of our regularly scheduled episode, I will have an episode in which I talk about what was announced, and what I'm excited for, and what I'm not excited for. So let's go to Gold and Silver. Gold and Silver was the launch of Generation 2 of Pokemon. And Generation, this is the beginning of the Generation terminology, where they introduce new Pokemon, introduce new mechanics, introduce, a new region, all that stuff that kind of sets apart, each time we do this. And each time it feels like a technical upgrade, each time we do it, and each one has its own kind of unique art style. Which keep that in mind as leaks happen. So, one of the things that I'm really kind of interested in with this game, and it's one of those things that keeps me going back to it, is how much better it looks than Generation 1. I don't think it's the best looking generation. I think the best looking generation is going to be Generation 3, and I don't think that's ever going to change for me. But I think they did such a good job here of laying out what this world feels like and looks like. It looks like we're starting to get stylization where the world's, like, each region has its own unique look and feel. Where Johto felt very generic kind of JRPG. Where it's like, we have a forest, we have caves, we have water, we have all this shit. And that's good, don't get me wrong. That is more than enjoyable. But here we start getting this idea of, Johto feels more... It feels different. And it feels like it's laid out in a way that makes it kind of, feel like it's its own little, not bottle, but it does feel different. Enough from Kanto. It's set 2 years after Red and Blue, so you do get some changes once you get to Kanto, to what the world is, and how that works, which is kind of cool. And then it's this is one of those games that came out in 2000, it came out, and I remember getting it and playing through the main story, and then you beat the Elite Four, and then it's like, oh, now you go to Kanto, and then you go and you're like, what the fuck is this? And then you're back in Vermilion City. And it's like, oh shit, and now we're back, we're going to play through the gyms from the first two games again. And then that fight against Red at the top of Mount Silver is iconic at this point. I think this is also the first time that we get, in Red and Blue, there was some working in of Mew and Mewtwo into the narrative, but by and large, there is no narrative for Articuno, Moltres, and Zapdos. There is some lore that goes in if you watch the anime, because I think that it's tied to Lugia being, the quote-unquote master of the trio, from Pokemon the Movie 2000, which is kind of cool. But then you also get this idea of, having this, yes, Suicune, Entei, and Raikou don't have a ton of lore here, but there is at least a little bit tying the, Ho-Oh and Lugia into the narrative a little bit, which is kind of cool as well. You get a chance to have that in the story and not just be like, oh, and there's this really powerful thing you can capture. We haven't quite reached the point like we do in Gen 3 where we're dealing with monsters that are gods. Like, these are just, really strong Pokemon, which is kind of cool. And the designs are great. Like, I love Ho-Oh and Lugia's design. Um, and I think there's a lot of things that happen really well. There are some disappointments. I wasn't fond of the fact at the time, or even to this day, that there's no Safari Zone. I think that there is a level curve that's not great, and there's no great way to level up. Which, on the one hand, is good because it does require you to, put thought into who you have on your team, and it does require you to think about type advantages a little bit more. You can't just power up and just plow on through in the way you could in prior and succeeding games, which is kind of interesting, and it's kind of a unique way to play this as its own thing. On the other hand, there is also the clock and the day-night cycle is cool, but I don't think that the game was designed to be able to do this to the degree that it does, because it runs out of battery very quickly in a way that Red and Blue doesn't. Where the battery in Red and Blue is to keep the save file active. The battery in this is designed to keep that, plus also keep track of the date and time, and because that's constantly being kept track of, it wears the battery out a lot quicker. Which is something else that, maybe was it worth it? Maybe not. I mean, the visual aesthetic that goes with it is really cool. But I digress on that. The introduction of hold items was an excellent idea. And it is the first time we get an expansion, a depth expansion in this series to make the game feel not more real, but more, competitive and add a level of depth to the combat. And the same goes for breeding mechanics, with the idea that you can breed your Pokemon and you can have them learn new moves based on breeding, Pokemon of different breeds, of different, species. As long as the females, whatever it is, if the male has a move that you want, it will pass down as an egg move, which is kind of cool. It also does help with the training and genetic. Very quickly, Pokemon becomes a eugenics simulator, unfortunately, for competitive players. Who are trying to play online ranked multiplayer. Although this doesn't really count. This is, Gold and Silver, which didn't have online. Obviously. What else was there about this? Yeah, I think aging the story was great, because it's like it makes everything feel kind of a little bit different, but not really. Bringing back Team Rocket was a great idea, because it does give you this sense of, this is this is the future. Things went poorly for them, and now they're going to try to reclaim. They have a motivation more than they did in the first one, which is kind of cool. And what else have I got? Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like the breeding thing is just so weird, because it's like, oh, so Professor Elm is going to be an expert on Pokemon breeding. It's like, alright, cool, he's going to be an expert on Pokemon breeding. He didn't know Pokemon were born from eggs until he got the egg from Professor Oak, and it's like, this guy, the professor, like, what the fuck is going on here? So, regardless, it is what it is. This is I think that if I were to say to someone who wanted to get their kid into playing Pokemon, or if I knew someone who was like, I want to play Pokemon for the first time, or I want to play Pokemon, I want to get to know their roots, I would probably start them here, and not with Red and Blue, because this game does feel more modern. And it is the first time we get a modern Pokemon game. It's kind of like if you were to look at a game that spun out of something else. If you were playing the first spin-off instead of playing the the actual first game, that might not be the best way to do it. Here, this is the place where I would say start them out. Start them here and then move on to the next thing. But as for the ranking, okay, so our current ranking is as follows. Where is it? Here it is. Number 8, we have Hey You Pikachu. Number 7, we have Pokemon Pinball. Number 6, we have Pokemon Puzzle Challenge and Pokemon Puzzle League. Number 5, we have the Trading. Number 4, we have Red and Blue. Number 3, we have Stadium. Number 2, we have Snap. Number 1, we have Yellow. I'm going to put this above Yellow. This is our new number 1, Pokemon Gold and Silver. Yeah. I think that it does a great job of expanding what we had and making it feel new, unique, and then also while still feeling very much like the original. And the art's just so great in this game. And it ages so well. Pixel art will always age well. But we will see how that comes down the line with other games. But that's not all we got for today. Let's talk about the Pokemon Presents. So, I talked about this before. I don't think we're getting Gen 10 until 2026. I think if the Pokemon Company is smart, they're going to try to line up Generation 10 with the major release of what's it called? Of the 30th anniversary. They're going to want it to come out there, and I get that. So the question is, what happens in 2024? What happens in 2025? And I think the answer to that is 1 year we get a Let's Go, 1 year we get a Legends, or a straight up remake and a Legends. I would have said Let's Go if Pokemon Go was still going as strong as it was when we got the first Let's Go, which unfortunately it's not. Pokemon Go does not have the user base that it used to. It does not have the cultural impact that it used to. So I don't think doing Let's Go is a great way to do that. Otherwise, I would have said we get Let's Go Johto. I think if we get a Let's Go game, I think if we get, we're going to get probably 2 mainline games in this announcement. I think we're going to get a Unova, and I think we're going to get a remake. I think the Unova one is going to be the A-Team game. Because I don't think that here's the thing that's making me think that. When you go through and play Scarlet and Violet, the Unova Pokédex is the one that has the most holes. The most Pokemon that don't make it into the Switch ecosystem and playable between any of the games we've had so far. The most by far is in it's in that era, that black and white era. And the reason for that is I think they are planning to do Unova big. And I think we're going to get that from the A-Team. And that's going to be, I think that of the two, between, Legends and between, between Legends and between, I guess a straight-up remake, I think that, and between the two eras I think we're going to be dealing with, we're going to be dealing with either Gen 2 or Gen 5. The one that makes the most sense for a Legends is black and white, because I don't think we've done enough exploring of Unova's lore and the weird lore around Kyurem and Zekrom and Reshiram, that it puts it in a place where it's like we can do some exploration here. We can look at what else is going on, and we can tell the story of the original dragon, and the origins of Team Plasma and all of these cool things. Not Team Plasma, Team Galactic. In a way that you can't... No, it was Plasma. Galactic was Gen 4. I was right the first time. Team Plasma. And I think that is one of the things that, it opens that up in that way. I don't think there's enough in the lore of Gen 2 to be we need to revisit this in this way. And I think, too, it's Legends Arceus worked. Because Legends Arceus is or Arceus he is a god. He's a literal god of a Pokemon. So to explore the backstory here and to get into the, Gen 4 is where we get, the god of time, the god of, the god of distortion, the god of space, and all of these Pokemon that have these giant macro abilities. I don't think you quite have versus realism or ideals versus truth or whatever the fuck it was. While at the same time, it's you don't have anything resembling that when it comes to Lugia and Ho-Oh, and then, the relevant Pokemon to that. It's one of those things where it's if you're gonna explore this, there's more fertile ground there. So if they're gonna do Legends, I think we're gonna get Legends Kyurem, if we're gonna get anything. If we're gonna get a remake, I think we get Gen 2 as a remake. And for that, I think this kind of lines up where it's we get the Gen 2 remakes this year, and then we get Legends next year. Actually, no, reverse that. I think we get Legends this year, remake next year. That way they have a full 2-year development cycle. on whatever Gen 10 is. And I think even that is one of those things where when this game comes out, Legends, if this is the case, we end up in a place where Legends doesn't feel quite right, and we're like, well, why did this happen? And it's like, well, the reason why that happened is because, a lot of it's just cut and paste from there. I don't think the Pokemon Company is going to be in a position where they're putting out a great game. And there's also the possibility that we just don't get a release this year at all. And they put it to next year, and it becomes not a launch title, but that first launch window title for the Switch 2. Because I've heard a report that maybe the Switch 2 doesn't come out this year. If Switch 2 doesn't come out this year, maybe they delay it to next year, and then it ends up in that launch window. Who knows? We'll see how that plays out. But I think this is as good a place as any to wrap up for today. I would also like to see Trozy come back. I would also like to see Pinball come back. And the thing I'm really looking for in this presentation is information about Switch Online, Game Boy, and Game Boy Advance, where we get Gens 1, 2, and 3 available for us to, to play. Like, that's what I want. Give me that. I don't even care if it's compatible with home. I'll take just being able to play the games again online. And make it, give me, that's, I think, the big thing is that I think the Game Boy Advance library is lacking. If they came in and they were like, by the way, on the 19th, on the anniversary of Ruby and Sapphire will be fully playable on Switch Online, boom, great. That'll drive subscriptions. But we'll wrap things up for today. And until tomorrow, have a great rest of your week.